New York City is lifting their vaccination mandates, but are continuing to punish those who resisted by forcing them to reapply for their jobs and denying them back pay. However, lawsuits against the city are still moving forward. They are intent on rectifying the damage met out by the city's vaccine policy. That is the subject of today's episode. And so, from Trial Site News, I am Adrian, and our episode is starting right now. So, back in October of 2021, then Mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, instituted a vaccine mandate for all the city's municipal workers. The question at the time was whether de Blasio was sacrificing safety in the city for his mandates. There were protests from first responders, including police union members who had, at the time, unsuccessfully tried to block the measure in court. Despite their setback, they were determined to stick to their guns. Many marchers insisted that they were not against the vaccine itself, just against the mandate. But Mayor de Blasio brushed aside any concerns for those not wishing to be forced to take the vaccine. He said this, "I am not having any second thoughts. We expected that a lot of the vaccinations would happen towards the end of the deadline. We also know a lot of people make the decision once they really realize that they're not going to get paid. That's just the human reality." Now, this is the same man, by the way, for those who may not remember, who condemned thousands of elderly people to their deaths by sending COVID patients to nursing homes. At the time, then Mayor Bill de Blasio was questioned about his decision-making, and he defended his actions, doubling down and suggesting that hospitalized patients who had tested positive for the coronavirus should still return to their nursing homes, even though they risked exposing other elderly residents to the virus. As he said about this in an interview, if the better care in that individual case is the hospital, of course, that's a go-to option. But there's going to be a time when a nursing home could be the better care if it's set up that way. Now, granted, he was just following then Governor Andrew Cuomo's lead, but so many people paid the ultimate price for their stupidity. Well over 12,000 long-term care patients were snuffed out by the COVID virus, thanks in large part to the fumbling mess that was the leadership in that state. Now back to the due date for the vaccination. At the time, 80% of the New York City police force had been vaccinated, and 72% of New York City firemen complied with the mandate. However, in response to the mandates, the Uniformed Firemen's Association, the Firefighters Union, and the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, the New York Police Department Union, filed lawsuits trying to prevent the mandate. For the rest of his administration, de Blasio faced several lawsuits over the vaccine authorization, and the mandate continued when de Blasio left and Eric Adams became mayor. Now, Adams would later lift the vaccine requirement for athletes and the private sector, but just not for municipal workers. No, apparently they weren't important enough to have their mandates come to an end. And so, the lawsuits against the city from cops and firemen over the mandate would continue. But now, here we are, present day, and there has been a shift in the New York City's COVID requirement policy. Just recently, Eric Adams announced the lifting of the vaccine mandate for public employees. Mayor Adams released a statement saying that with more than 96% of the city workers and more than 80% of New Yorkers having received their primary COVID-19 series and more tools readily available to keep us healthy, this is the right moment for this decision. And City Health Commissioner Dr. Ashwin Vasan agreed with the mayor, saying this, "It is clear these mandates saved lives and were absolutely necessary to meet the moment. We are grateful that we can now, as we leave the emergency phase of the pandemic, modify more of the rules that have gotten us to this point. However, there appears to be one major problem. Close to 2,000 of the city workers were fired for not getting the vaccination, and there is a question over whether or not they'll get their jobs back. You see, the office of the mayor said that these workers need to reapply for their jobs, and that back pay would not be provided. And so, of course, this means that the lawsuits against the city are going to keep moving forward. The workers include not only police and firemen, but teachers, Department of Health employees, as well as other municipal employees. As reported by the New York Post, a lawyer representing the fired worker said active litigation will continue. claiming the vaccination mandate was unconstitutional and his clients deserve back pay and damages after suffering financial and professional harm. Lawyer John Bursch with the group Alliance Defending Freedom said that all the plaintiffs have suffered substantial damages in the form of lost pay, lost medical coverage, and other harms as a result of the city's unconstitutional conduct. The plaintiffs are entitled to a remand so that the lower courts can determine how much the city owes them for its unconstitutional conduct. And Bursch would go on to say that the terminated employees have a negative letter in their personnel file that may prevent reemployment with the city or employment, and those records need to be stricken. He also said some teachers lost their instructional licenses during their dismissal, and that also warrants redress. He would go on to say that there is also a legal threshold issue. The courts have to rule on the constitutionality of the vaccination requirements once and for all because the city, quote, could simply reimpose the mandate at any time. Another attorney in the case, James Myrmigas, said that we will continue to fight until everyone is reinstated and made whole. And indeed, union leaders agree that the fight is far from over. They will not rest until all fired workers get reinstated with back pay. As PBA President Patrick Lynch was quoted as saying, "We are glad that the city has decided to stop fighting against our court victory overturning this unjust and illogical mandate. However, the job is only half done. We call on the city to ensure that our members who were fired or had their employment unfairly impacted are reinstated with back pay and without condition." And so we can see that the lifting of the mandate does not stop the debate over the vaccination requirement. City Council member Republican Joe Borelli said, "I think it is time for us to really talk about hiring back the workers that were unfairly let go, whether we can talk about back pay or more importantly, whether we can talk about pension credits." New York City's mandate has been a political mess from the very beginning, and a dangerous grasping of power in a country that has long cherished individual freedom for much of its storied history. But now the question is, will the Big Apple be forced to pay out for those that they have harmed with their vaccination mandates? Only time, of course, will tell. And that, my friends, will bring our episode to a close once more. As always, thank you so much for joining me on the program today. For more content like this, be sure to check back to this channel daily, Monday through Friday, or for numerous written articles every day, 7 days a week, feel free to check us out at trialsitenews.com. From Trial Site News, I am Adrian, and I will see you all next time.